This is Mona Tancha, President of NCSM, and welcome to Learning with Leaders, the Bold Mathematics Leadership Series. Join me as I sit down and have conversations with emerging and established leaders exploring equity in action. You will hear from bold mathematics leaders as they share their experiences and actions and what they have learned from them. We think these next few minutes will help you consider the bold actions that you can take to focus on equity and support those that you serve. Grab a warm cup of coffee and a journal as we learn together on our mathematics leadership journey. Hello, and welcome to the NCSM podcast, Learning with Leaders, the Bold Mathematics Leadership Series. John Sangiovanni and I are excited about the upcoming Bold Leadership conversation. For the podcast in January through April, we have invited the featured speakers that are presenting at the NCSM Bold Leadership Summit Mathematics Leadership, engaging in the essential actions, to sit down with us and discuss what equity means to them and provide us a quick preview of the new learning that we will experience in April. Our guest today is Mike Flynn, and he is the Director of Mathematics Leadership Programs at Mount Holyoke College, where he runs the Master of Arts in Teaching Mathematics program and leads a wide variety of professional learning opportunities for teachers and teacher leaders in all different roles. He is also the author of Beyond Answers, Exploring Mathematical Practices with Young Children, and Mike is also a former second grade teacher in Southampton, Massachusetts for 14 years, where he was named the Massachusetts Teacher of the Year in 2008. I can't say that fast. And was also the recipient of the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics Teaching in 2010. Personally, I have watched several of his videos this past spring and summer to help with providing stellar professional learning in a remote setting. He's just awesome to learn from, and he's so willing to share his expertise with others. And we are so grateful that you are here today with us. So let's give him a warm welcome to Mike Flynn.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Mike. Welcome. Really glad to have you. I know you're an all-around great guy, and I want to just say thank you for all that you do for mathematics education. It is much appreciated. And frankly, today I'm just really excited to hear what you have to say about advocacy and learn about a little bit more about your session. And again, welcome.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, so we're going to ask this question of all of our speakers. So the first one is, what does equity in mathematics education mean to you?
That's a great question. I think there's so many facets of equity. And I think personally, when I hear equity in mathematics education, I first think about just math as being sort of the gatekeeper subject in some ways. Like I feel like for so many students, and when we think about career options in the world, math is often one of the prerequisites to go into certain career pathways. And so in a lot of ways, a student's success or lack of success in math can open or close doors to them. And so when I think about equity in mathematics education, I think about allowing all students to have equal access to high quality enriching math experiences so that they can have the same kinds of outcomes in being successful in math. And that's something that we all need to be advocating for, to make sure that each and every student has the ability to have some enriching math experiences, to have access to high quality tasks, great math teachers who are knowledgeable, not just about the subject matter, but also on how students learn, and teachers who are also knowledgeable about the individual differences of their students. So it also means, when we think about equity, is teaching in a way that where we see each student, their backgrounds, their experiences, their cultures, their language, all of the elements that they bring to the classroom, that when we teach in a way that values all of those differences and provides opportunities to authentically include them and celebrate them within a math classroom, all of that shapes what I consider good, equitable mathematics teaching. And I think that's something that's definitely worth advocating for, and certainly a big component of the session I'll be leading for the summit.
Yeah, so Mike, as you were talking, this equity issue is such an important topic, a critical topic, and you made me think about advocacy in general, and how do we advocate for equitable mathematics, for access to high quality tasks, and so much more. But one thing I want to ask you about relative to advocacy, is what is something that you think is misunderstood about advocacy?
So I think one thing that happens when a lot of people hear advocacy, there's a couple of things that come to mind. Sometimes people think about it as like what unions do, or sort of at the national or policy level. So advocacy in education is seen as sort of something that the movers and shakers, so that sort of agitators of the profession do at the state and national level. And so I think that although that does happen, that's one form of advocacy. Advocacy in its core is really about influence and action at any level. And so it could be you talking to a colleague next door and encouraging them to think about doing number talks in their class, for instance, and giving them some supporting resources to help them with that, and listen to their concerns about cutting out time to build in number talks, and then helping them to figure out a way that they could weave it in. All of those actions that you do in that little collegial interaction is a form of advocacy. You're advocating for this shift in their math teaching practice, and you're doing it in a very micro level. And so advocacy is not something that's situated just at this major, massive level. And it's also not, sometimes all people will think about advocacy from the special education standpoint, which is also a great place where we see really good educational advocacy. But there's that when you think about people who are paid as advocates to support parents through the IEP process, I think sometimes people conflate that kind of advocacy versus like advocating change within a system in any discipline in education. So I think those are some misunderstandings that people have. But I think what I hope to do is help people see themselves, everybody, as an advocate in some form or another, and also to give people a lens into the different ways in which they could flex their advocacy muscles in a way, and maybe even think about places where they may stretch and try to expand on their advocacy into different levels.
And Mike, I like your definition of advocacy. Advocate is one of the guiding principles of the framework for leadership in mathematics education. And that's the session that you'll be really tackling at the Bold Leadership Summit. One thing that when I was a classroom teacher, I always felt like I really didn't have that sphere of influence, right? And I think when we talk about advocacy, we have to think about who is in our sphere of influence, and how do we advocate for the change we need to see in our classrooms, the change we need to see in our systems, because it could be one conversation with a principal that makes a world of difference in mathematics, the program or the system. So in terms of that, thinking about like the advocacy piece, what are some of the big ideas that you're going to be discussing or sharing with us that, we can look forward to or kind of read up on to get started with the process?
Yeah, I'm going to give you all a bunch of pre-reading assignments if you want. So
okay, there we go.
Fan, as you know, if you've ever watched any of my other presentations, I like to read not just education books, but books outside of education that relate, that I can tie to education. I think sometimes we can learn a lot from people who are outside our field, because there's, particularly in the areas of psychology, because there's so much great research being done on change and on belief systems and on advocacy, that we can draw upon some of these outside resources and think about how we can use those experts' knowledge to help us think about how we advocate for educational change. But to start, I think one of the things I do want to address is the knowledge and skills and dispositions that are needed for each of the levels of advocacy. So I think helping people to see advocacy at the micro level, which also you can think of as the individual level, helping people like individuals. There's the mezzo level, which is sort of groups. How you advocate for groups, whether it's a group of teachers, a group of coaches, a group of parents, community members, stakeholders, however you want to define your groups. And then there's the macro level, which is the systems level. And each level does require different skills and dispositions. And so part of the session will be to help people to understand those differences and what's needed at each of them to really be a successful advocate at those levels. The other thing I'd like to think about are different models of advocacy. One in particular I've been really interested in comes from Harvard University. It's Dr. Julie Badalana and Dr. Marissa Kimsey have this idea of thinking of these three sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Players, I guess, would be the best way to describe it, that work in conjunction to support any kind of advocacy initiative. And that is one role is the agitator. And this is the person that, or people that sort of raise the issue, get it out onto the front lines, get it on the agendas, get it on the principal's desk or the superintendent's desk. They're the ones that sort of shine the light on the issue that's affecting a group or many groups or people, however we want to describe that. There's also innovators in this model, and the innovators are the ones that come up with the solutions, the actionable things that we can do to support this change. And then the other player in this model is the orchestrator, and the orchestrator basically puts these things into action to work at all levels of the system. And so what I like about this model is when we think about it, different people have different comforts with these roles. So there are some people who like to shake things up. They see themselves as an agitator, which is really good. But if we only have agitators, basically what you get is just a bunch of complaining, right? You get people who will name a problem and give you all the reasons why the problem is bad, but not offer anything to do about it, which is why we need other parts of this system. So we have other people who are really creative. So you've got these innovators who can come up with these great solutions, but they might not have the time or the resources to think about how to scale it or how to make it work at a district level or state level, regional level, however you want to think about it. And so therefore you've got your orchestrators. These are people who have the skill sets to think about situating this change initiative and supporting this change initiative across lots of different fields and stakeholders. And so when we consider sort of what it takes to be an agitator or an innovator or an orchestrator, and then how they all play together, these are things that we can think about in terms of mathematics education, how we can develop these skills to then support people in developing their own advocacy skills and develop their understanding of what it means to be an advocate. And then just to give people some pre-reading. So those are some of the big things in the beginning that will launch the session, but I'm going to be drawing on some works from people outside the field that I highly recommend people check out. So one of them is Simon Sinek, which I'm sure people have seen TED Talks and things, right?
Love him.
But his book Start With Why is a really good resource for this, which is really getting at like that's when we think about like from the chapter in your book here, around being an advocate, we talk about sort of getting that shared vision. So if we all understand why we're advocating for this change in math education, why are we advocating for high quality mathematics for everybody, that like this helps us kind of frame that work. Of course, I'm going to mention Chip and Dan Heath because they're like my favorite. But there's two books that are really helpful when we think about change in advocacy is Made to Stick and Switch, which I've referenced both at previous NCSM sessions. A few other ones really quick is Richard Thaler has a book called Nudge, which is about sort of making those initial steps into a change effort. Robert Cialdini has a book called Persuasion, which is about how we create the conditions to help people see the need to change. So when we think about persuading people, persuasion is what you do ahead of time to make sure that the conditions are right to make that change work easier. And then one last one, Jonah Berger has a book called Contagious, Why Things Catch On. And I think a big part of advocacy is messaging and getting your point across and helping people see the value in what you're advocating. And Contagious kind of gets at sort of the psychology behind why people get excited about one movement over another. And we can use that when we think about the kinds of changes we want to make in math education. We can build excitement about this across all stakeholders. And so I'll be leveraging the work of a lot of these other researchers and thought leaders to support this session.
So Mike, as I hear you speak and I think about your session, I get excited for the session. I think about as a leader attending the summit. I think about all the things as a leader I don't know, and how many more things I need to invest in myself. And the question I have for you is, I think about leaders, and I always feel like I'm a new leader, even though I'm rather old, or so I've been told. What advice would you give a new leader about being an advocate?
So I guess the first big advice I give to everybody, new leader, old leader, doesn't matter, is advocacy begins with listening. So a lot of times when we think about, so people often will advocate for things they want, right? So if I want to change, I want math to be more student centered, and that's what I want. So if I go out into the world and I preach what I want, I'm not going to have a really receptive audience. So the way to really be a good, strong advocate is to listen to your audience that you're trying to change. What are their pain points? What's their concerns? Where are they coming from? Why do they feel the way they do about math education? So if we have, for example, people who think that tracking is really important and we should have high kids and low kids. I hate those terms, by the way, but let's just say that that's our audience, and it's room 500 people who all think high kids, low kids, that's the way we got to do it. We got to track kids, we got to level them. And the first thing I'm going to do is I want to figure out as much as I can about why they hold the beliefs they do. I want to try to understand the concerns they have, because if I want to change them, if I want to be an advocate and influence and affect this change within this audience, I'm not going to do it by lecturing them. I'm not going to do it by presenting data of why I think that's wrong. What I'm going to try to do is to appeal to what their wants and desires are and help them see how the things that they're concerned about are actually alleviated with the model of detracking and the idea that we have the power of having a classroom with diverse learners who are bringing different perspectives of a math idea. And if I can weave in their pain points and help them to see how what we're pushing for here is actually something that's going to address their concerns and is going to support them, I'm going to get much further along with that audience than I am if I just try to just push it in and I get on my soapbox. And so I want to my first advice always is to be a good listener, understand your audience, and then spend some time before you even work with them to figure out how you're going to message that. How are you going to craft your message in a way so that the audience will be receptive of it? So that's right out of the gate. Really, I think works across all levels of leadership and advocacy.
Thanks. That's really helpful, and the message I hope to carry forward myself. Thank you.
Yeah, it made me think of a lot of the conversations I have around beliefs and the mindsets, and changing what somebody believes, right, is it's part of their core is really difficult. So there's been a lot of conversations around developing your identity and really reframing your identity to build that mathematical agency. So just a kind of our closing question for you here, but what success stories have you experienced or seen in the work of advocacy, either at a local level, at a national level? Like, what are some of those highlights, so to speak?
Yeah, I'll share one. So there's a school district I've been working with for the last 3 years, I think is a model for this kind of system-wide advocacy and change in math education. And I want to just say right out of the gate, it's not because of me. I'm fortunate to work with them. What you have here, the reason why this is a success is because there was internal leaders, advocates at different levels that saw the need for change, and they began developing this really strong systemic movement to change math education. When I got brought in, they've already started to think about the important pieces. And my role was as the professional learning provider. So I provided sessions for them. But here's what works is that you have a curriculum. So I'll just name the school districts. I think they should get credit for this. It's the Southwick, Tolland, Granville School District out here in Massachusetts. But their curriculum director, coaches, and administrators, including the superintendent, all wanted to make sure that every level of the system, teachers, paraprofessionals, special education teachers, parents, school board, administrators, everybody was part of this movement. Everybody would get professional learning based on their roles and get supported. And it's been ongoing. It's been a 3-year project so far and ongoing still. But because they've authentically allowed people to express concerns and questions, teachers have input at all levels. Everybody sort of, their ideas, everything's kind of put on the table and then validated and discussed and taken into account. And it's one of the first times I've really seen strong systemic change, and it's working. You're seeing such differences in these classrooms. These teachers work so hard. Everybody's invested in this work, but it's because you had these strong advocates who are within the system, putting the right pieces in place. You've got leadership that's behind it. They're at the sessions, they're sitting at the tables doing math. All of that works because there was that shared vision that was orchestrated by people within the system who were strong advocates for it. They brought in the right kinds of support they needed, and everybody backs it. And I think that, to me, is such a model for what good systemic change looks like. And it began with strong math advocacy.
Yeah. What you just described is what I get to experience when I'm working with schools. And what I love about it is it kind of bleeds into one of the other guiding principles, which is empower. Because what you're saying by being an advocate, you are also empowering those that you work with, either your peers, the leaders above you, the leaders, like the north, south, east, west kind of paradigm area, which I think is like, you can't just advocate. I think that's what you're saying. It's not just about going out there and saying, hey, do this. It's about empowering those that you work with, so that by building that shared vision, everybody is like, yes, this is something we can all do. Which is just, it's an amazing to be a part of that.
And to me, that empowering is engaging, right? And that, something that resonates with me is that math leadership is not an individual or a position, but it's the engagement of each and every stakeholder, be it teacher, student, principal, parent, community. And I think sometimes, we're so caught up in helping to make change that we, miss that. So thank you for that. That really gives me something to chew on for some time.
Good.
Yeah. And the book list, I already got a long stack. Now I'm just going to add more to it. I got Christmas break, right?
I'll have a whole reference list for people, for attendees and stuff. So they'll have plenty of
there you go
to do afterward. Yeah.
There you go. All right. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And we are just so looking forward to April. We know that we don't know what April's going to look like in terms if it's going to be in person, hybrid, virtual. Just know that NCSM is working on it, and we'll have something soon. Hopefully by the time this podcast gets published, like anybody who listens to this in January, you got a preview, like it could be hybrid, it could be all virtual. We're good. We're in the works. But all of our speakers are with us no matter which way we do it. So we're really looking forward to that.
Oh, good. Yeah, me too. And I just appreciate the opportunity to be part of it. So thank you for the invitation.
You're very welcome.
And thanks for spending time with us on our second podcast, thinking about equity, leadership, and today, advocacy. So thank you, Mike, for taking time out of your tremendously busy schedule to spend some time and share some ideas with our members.
My pleasure. Thank you both very much.
Thank you for listening. We hope you have been inspired by this bold mathematics leadership conversation and will tune into our podcast series each month. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and a review. You can learn more about NCSM, Leadership in Mathematics Education, and our upcoming professional learning events on the NCSM website at mathedleadership.org. You can also follow NCSM on Twitter at mathedleaders using the hashtag NCSMBold. Thanks again.